Hi, welcome back to Monetize.ly's YouTube channel. In this video, I want to talk about price points, setting price points for your product. Now, if you've heard us before, you will hear us talking again and again. Hey, it's not just about the price point. You first have to think about the offer, the packaging, right? How are you going to set the right offer for the right segment? Because you're going to make the most amount of money there. And then how are you going to pick a pricing metric that's going to align your offering with the customer? So we talk about this and then we say, then comes the price point. But let's just talk about the price point now. Let's say you figured out the right package. Let's say you figured out the right pricing metric and now you're thinking about pricing metric. I'll give you a very simple hack. No 10,000 strategies, only 3 C's to setting the right price point. Customer, COGS, and competition. So when you have to set a price point, what is that a function of? How much your customer is willing to pay. It's a function of the alternatives. When I say competition, other competitors as well as alternatives they have access to, and how much it costs you. So your customer will pick between two options, either you or an alternative, right? You have to think about also how much it costs for you to produce. So there are only 3 C's that are inputs to a price point decision. The first, how much are customers willing to pay? How do you find that out? If you have a more of a black box or an opaque sort of product that is easy for customers to understand, then you can say, hey, you can do something like a Van Westendorf analysis, which is very simply said, asking customers the maximum that they would be willing to pay and beyond which they cannot foresee paying for a product like this, and the number below which they would start to question the quality. Now, there are 2 other questions that are of a similar nature, but it's easily Googleable, and you can quickly create a chart based on survey responses that when these 2 curves intersect, give you an optimal price point. It is a price at which the same number of people consider the product too expensive or too cheap. So it's where you maximize your market. That's the OPP. That's the simplest way any product manager, any product marketer can run a price point analysis. All right. There are more complex methods like conjoint analysis that also does the job. If you have a more simpler offering, let's say Netflix, or a more consumer SMB focused offering, you can definitely consider conjoint analysis to figure out the right price point for your offering. But these are 2 quick methods. We'll post some links of videos. We've talked about these methods in our other videos. But that is how you understand what the customer is willing to pay. The next is research about competition. So competition, I would say, involves both direct competitors and alternatives. And here is what I see companies mistaking too often is they focus too much on competition, direct competitors. The problem with direct competitors is you may have a wide open market. You may have more of a blue ocean market and you may not have many competitors. So you may have more degrees of freedom. And the moment you say, hey, I'm really worried about the competition, then you start to actually get in their frame of business, their customers, their segments, and your business may have nothing really to do with how they are operating. So you start to limit yourself. At the same time, I think you have to be cognizant of direct competitors and you have to be cognizant of alternatives. You can have a service for which maybe you don't have direct competitors, but now with all of these AI products, there is a easy way for the customer to replicate your product or an easy way to build something internally. And most of the times in software land, we're always fighting against spreadsheets. We're always doing build versus buy. So you have to estimate how much effort the customer is going to want to spend on finding an alternative, right? So that would be the price that they would pay for that alternative. So first you figure out how much they're willing to pay for your service. Second, you have to figure out how much would a customer pay to get their alternative or competitive option, right? So you have 2 C's. And the third C is your COGS. Now, your cost of goods sold are both inclusive of fixed costs that went into you creating the product as well as the costs that take for you to deliver the product. Now, most of the times you're going to remove the fixed cost and only focus on the marginal cost, but I would advise you take both into account, especially if fixed costs are very high, as in the case of building foundation LLM and AI products, right? So you have to have a good sense of what it costs for your thing to produce. Now, once you have these 3, then it's mostly your judgment. Do you want to be priced closer to where most of your customers are? You want to be priced at a little bit of premium? Where do you want to be relative to the pricing for alternatives and competition? and you probably definitely want to be at a certain level above your cost of goods sold. Is that a 30% margin, a 40% margin, and 80% margin? Answer to that is a function of what you find out about the 3 C's and the price points that you get for the 3 C's. And it's as simple as that. Price point is a judgment call. Now, price point will definitely sit. It will be based on the pricing metric you chose. If your product is sold on a per seat basis, it will be price point per seat. If your product is sold on a per gigabyte basis, it will be price point per gigabyte. If it's on a per token basis or credit basis, it will be that. But regardless of whatever it is, selecting the price point is your judgment call. All right. Now, just note that when I say this, I do not mean that this is broadly for your whole market. You have to do this exercise for each and every different customer segment, because there are some customer segments that don't have a lot of willingness to pay. But there are at least in most software businesses and even in a lot of services businesses, there is a thin sliver of customers that tend to have a very high willingness to pay. Complex government contracts, healthcare businesses, with compliance needs, with security needs. There's going to be businesses that have 10x, even maybe 20, 30x willingness to pay than other segments. So you really need to do the price point analysis by understanding your customer segments and doing this across your customer segments well, because that is where you will find the delta in willingness to pay, and that's where you end up making most of the money. So thank you. I hope this was helpful, but in a very simple way, trying to figure out price points, customer, competition, and COGS. Then figure out and go from there. Thank you.